Hey everybody, welcome back to Sophisticakes by Mary. For this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made this marble fondant cake that I decorated with some edible tulle, some rice paper puffs, and some cute little isomalt hearts. First of all, we're going to go ahead and make our rice paper puffs. I'm having a hard time saying that. Rice paper puffs. And what we're going to do first is just cut them into triangles. Just cut more than you think you're going to need is my kind of rule of thumb. And you'll see that there's some pink ones here as well. I did both of these at the same time a while ago, and I already have the tutorial for the one with the pink ones, but this time I'm using the black. And you will notice that I am coloring these black, but actually when you puff them up, they turn more gray. So what I'm using is just some black airbrush color in a little bit of water. Is all that is. And I'm just brushing it on and then flipping them over, and they will absorb the moisture as they sit. Now we're going to use some clear oil. I use some vegetable oil. Any clear oil will work. And get it up to the temperature where you have little bubbles on the end of your wooden spoon that come up when you put your spoon into the oil. When you have those little bubbles that come up, you know that it's to temperature. And just go ahead and put those in and just let them fry up. Now, when you add that much color to your rice paper, they don't get as puffy as they would with just the white. Those get puffier, but you still get a really neat texture. And now we're gonna make our tulle, edible tulle. And I'm just using some more rice paper, or this time, wafer paper. Rip it up into pieces, and that is 1.5 sheets of wafer paper with 100 milliliters of water. Put it in your little Ninja, or a food processor would work also. Anything that's going to pulse it, and you get that kind of a paste, a thin paste texture or thickness to it. And then I added just a little bit of turquoise food coloring. Turquoise is the theme here with the colors. It's different shades of turquoise. Now you bring your nonstick pan, up to a medium-high heat. Then you just put 1 to 2 tablespoons of your mixture onto your pan. Brush it out a little bit thin, actually pretty thin. The thinner it is, the more flexible it is. And what gets that texture, that lacy texture, is the bubbles that are created by the heat of the pan. Now don't let your pan get too hot, because if it gets too hot, your color is going to turn more kind of yellow. It gets a yellow tinge to it. And I just did this with all of them and just set them aside, and they get softer and more flexible as they sit. And I store them in an airtight Tupperware is what I do once I have them done and cooled until I'm ready to use them. Now to make these isomalt hearts, I just use this pre-made isomalt mix. You just add some water, go for the instructions on the package. That's the easiest way to do it. Melt it down, get it up to temperature 310 to 320 degrees, and then I set it down and let the bubbles kind of dissipate a little bit. And then I just dipped my toothpick in the color and just marbled it in. Now we're going to make our marbled fondant. I wanted it more white than what I got, so I did not use that much black, but I still got more black than I wanted. I wanted just those subtle streaks of black in the white, like a marble countertop. But I got a little bit more zebra stripey, whatever. It's still pretty, it's just not what I wanted. That's the thing with marbled fondant. You are not guaranteed how it's gonna turn out. You get what you get. And then dust your surface with some cornstarch. You can use powdered sugar if you prefer, but I like the cornstarch. I find the powdered sugar kind of gives it a grainy texture, and the cornstarch just absorbs into it. And roll it out into about 1/4 inch thickness. And now check both sides, because one side, you're always going to like one side more than the other. And I just straightened out the edge on the one side, and then I had measured the height and the width, or the circumference of my cake. And I should mention now that the isomalt is actually in the freezer cooling as I'm doing the rest of this. And then cut that down to size and set it aside. Now we're removing them from the isomalt from the mold once they have cooled, and I'm using my blowtorch, my creme brulee torch, to torch the surface of your isomalt. And what that's going to do is it's going to get rid of the cloudiness, and it's going to bring most of the bubbles up to the surface that you will have in your isomalt. Now, move that torch around. Do not leave it in one place for too long because it will melt your isomalt. And right there, I was just putting a little bit of shortening on the cake. Now, if you're going to do this for an order, either make sure your hands are clean and dry or use gloves when you do that, or just use a brush if you prefer. And then now that this fondant has set aside and firmed up a little bit, it's easy to just pick it up and wrap it around your cake. Let it sit. You're not wrapping it around the upper edge of your cake, so you don't have to worry about it tearing and elephant skinning. You're just wrapping it around the cake. So it's fine. Just let it sit for a while. And I use a little water to attach where the fondant overlapped the other piece of fondant. And I set that aside to firm up a little bit also. Here I show you the difference between a torched one and one that's not. And here we did another shade of the turquoise. Now what I did was I just used the extra that I had from the first batch and just added a little bit more isomalt to it, and I got a lighter shade. It's exactly the same color. And to get those skewers and toothpicks on, I just added a little bit of melted isomalt. And then I'm just spraying them with some confectioner's glaze, and what that does is it seals the isomalt and it keeps it from getting cloudy for a little longer. Anytime you have isomalt, as it sits, it's going to cloud over a little bit. And if you put it in your refrigerator and bring it out, it's going to cloud over even more. So what I would suggest with isomalt decorations is attach them prior to presentation or serving. You don't want to put them in the day before and then leave it in your refrigerator. They'll be fine. They're just going to be cloudy. They're not going to have that pretty clear look to them. And that's what I was going for. And then I just topped it off with some silver edible leaf. And my fondant was a little tacky, so I didn't have to add anything to it. But if your fondant is completely dry, just put a little bit of water where you want your pieces of your edible leaf to stick. And I did a little bit on the hearts also. I wanted to kind of tie it together that way. And I also stuck some of those, well, I didn't say anything about the tulle and the rice paper puffs. I just arranged them and adhered them with some piping gel. Now, you might need to use some toothpicks to hold them in place while it dries. You can also attach those hearts on the bottom with just a little piping gel. That works just fine. Now go ahead, I went and I added a little bit of edging on that top edge and the piece that's folded over and draped on the side there where the two pieces overlapped with a little bit of silver luster dust mixed with some Everclear, just to finish it off. And then if you want to emphasize some of the veins in the marbling, you can add a little line of the edible luster dust paint on that as well. It just kind of adds a little extra touch, I think. And just use a fine tipped brush to do that. And try not to do just a straight line. Kind of wiggle your hand around, kind of dot it as you go. Make it more irregular, just like in nature. And there you have it. There she is, all done. Now there's a lot of textures going on in this cake, a lot going on, a lot of different shades of the same color, but I wanted to show how you can use different shades of the same tone and get a really cohesive look with all of that. I hope you enjoyed it. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch my video. And if you'd like to watch some other videos, go ahead and click on the link to one of these other videos shown here. And if you would like to Check out my other social media. I am on Facebook and Instagram under the same name, Sophisticakes by Mary. And please take the time to share, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next tutorial.